Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. This is the Buy Local Community Preferences for Local Food Educational Forum hosted by the Solano Local Food System Alliance. My name is Stephanie Jordan, and I'm the Local Food Program Manager at Sustainable Solano. I would first like to honor and acknowledge the many indigenous tribes who have stewarded this land for generations. The unceded territory of California is home to over 200 tribal tribes, and we will be dropping into the chat a native lands map and invite you to take a look at that so that you can learn more about where you live. Again, I'm with Sustainable Solano. My name is Stephanie, and I also have with us Allison Nagel. If anyone has any technical issues, Allison will be supporting on the back end. And I will be also introducing Elena Carolina, our other co-executive director, in a minute, and she will give some background about the program. And for any of those of you who are not familiar with the Solano Local Food System Alliance, we are a pretty large group now, actually, of a variety of stakeholders around Solano County. And the mission of the Alliance is to create an environmentally regenerative, economically viable, and socially just local food system in Solano County. And Elena will speak more about the history of the Alliance and kind of where we've been and where we are today. So Sustainable Solano does some administrative backbone support with the Alliance, so that's why we are helping to host the meeting today. What we would like everyone to do, just so we can know who is here, is if you could please drop into the chat your name and organization that you're with. And also, if you are an Alliance member, if you could note that as well, that would be much appreciated. And we can all see where we're from and who is here. Let's see. I think that that's all I'm going to speak about. So I'm going to turn it over to Elena Carolina, our co-executive director at Sustainable Solano. She was one of the main project managers on this project, and I'll let her take it from here.
Thanks, Steph. Good evening, everyone. Good to see so many names, familiar names. Just a brief introduction to why are we even doing this. Sustainable Solano started working with the local food system in 2017, where we received funding from USDA to do a feasibility study of what really is local food, state of local food in Solano County. And this is how we first connected with Dr. Kristin Kiesel, who will be our main presenter today, to help guide us in this feasibility study, where we were trying to understand what is the supply and demand really in the county. And the results was somewhat frustrating that we discovered that there is really no concept of local food system. We are an agricultural county. We know what agriculture is, but really what is local food and why it's important was very weak conceptually. And this is what we've been working to change ever since. This is how actually Solano Local Food System Alliance came to be. Many of original members, both the advisory board members on the first USDA project on the feasibility study, and when we looked at the very sad results of lack of understanding, lack of supply, lack of demand, we said we can't leave it like this. So we decided to stay together and continue working to change the situation in the county. So we're very grateful to all Alliance members, all the original and new coming every year that are joined with this vision that Steph just shared. So we've been building the awareness of local food through cooking classes, through our annual Bounty of the County celebration event. I know many of you have been participating there, and through policy work and support through the Alliance. And we felt we reached probably everyone we could in the county. It felt, a little bit like we were preaching to the choir. And to help us take this work into the next stage, we've conceived this project that will be presented today, which is again funded by USDA, to develop a communication strategy based on marketing research to expand our reach, to provide more support for local farmers, and to increase economic activity in the local food. So the first stage of this project is complete, and that's what will be presented today. And our next stage is to develop the communication strategy and marketing plan. So that's what we will be listening for today. This data that will be presented today will be foundation for this next step. Before we go into this very detailed presentation, I just have one ask for the community. We are looking for a local marketing agency who could help us shape the communication strategy. We had no luck finding one in Solano County or nearby. We've identified one out of state. But if anyone who is listening have any good connections, could you please guys get back to us? We would very much appreciate that. Okay, now Dr. Kristin Kiesel and her team. So Kristin is working at the Department of Agricultural Economics at UC Davis, and her research focused on the economics of food consumption, especially with the emphasis on the informational effects. And what was very interesting for us is not only Kristin is studying consumer behavior, but she's also looking at the marketing opportunities to determine the effectiveness of the intervention that is being proposed. So it's been an incredibly valuable resource for us. So thank you, Dr. Kiesel, very much for all these years of guiding us. And please take it from here.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you for this nice introduction. And thank you, everyone, for attending today. We are very excited to be here. And I've worked with Sustainable Solano now for quite some years. And I've worked on regional food systems for quite some years. We are working with nonprofit partners in Sacramento. We just started a study in Ventura County, which is very similar or similar attributes as we see in Solano County. And we are really excited to share some of the data here with you. I'm, as Elena said, a professor here at UC Davis in the Agricultural and Resource Economics Department. What we are presenting is really a joint effort between me and then also some of our students. I have one of our PhD students here with me, Hyunjung Lee, who is doing this work as part of her dissertation. She will actually give the presentation, and then we have plenty of room for questions. I also want to mention that in the audience, we have one of our undergraduate students that's going to help with finishing up some of the reports and some of the data that we are providing Sustainable Solano. So what we are showing today here are highlights from a subset of the data analysis that we completed. We have still some work that we are completing and writing this all up in a marketing plan. And this is what Eileen Nguyen will help us with, and she is in the audience here today. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Hyunjung, who will give us a quick presentation. And just so you know, we tried to keep the presentation relatively non-technical and translated some of the tables into bullet points and did some graphs, but we are more than happy to go into a lot of details afterwards.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you for explaining. So I'm a sixth-year PhD student at UC Davis, and I have been working with Dr. Kiesel, my professor, and then also like Sustainable Solano team since like 2024, I guess. Okay, so let me share my screen.
And while Hangyang sets this up, feel free to ask questions while we present or drop them in the chat. And then again, we will have a lot of questions, room for questions afterwards as well.
Okay, let me see. Can you see my screen, or I guess
There it is.
Okay, there we go.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. So today I'm gonna talk about like this is the title of our project, like buy local marketing messages for Solano County. Um, okay, so here's the overview and project goal. And basically, as Elena and then Kiesel explained, we have been collaborating since like 2024. And then this project is basically to develop like effective marketing strategy that increase like demand and expand like market for food grown and then produced in Solano County, which is like a local food. Um, and then basically this project tried to strengthen the revenue generating potential for small and the medium-sized farmer and food business as well in the county that ensures access to high quality food for diverse consumer groups. Okay, so here's an overview profile of Solano County consumers and then retail environment. So as of like 2024, around or like about like 446K residents lives in Solano County, but the population growth slowed in recent years. And then also about like 61.5% working age population. And then the one interesting thing is like Solano County is the most highly diverse in the nation. And then also like economic variation. Okay, oh, sorry. So it has like a little bit a slightly higher median income. But the thing is like in Solano County, more than 50 or like about like 50% they are high income. But also like about like 10% of like population are below the poverty line. Um, and then retail and market environment. So basically, we collected some information about like a grocery stores and then discount stores or like a local market or like a farmer's market in Solano County. And then here's the map. We kind of like a mapping all the grocery stores and the farm stand as well. So basically like around like 70 grocery stores, farm stand, and then farmers market in Solano County. And then, yeah. All right. Okay, so here's the research question or like the goal of our like research question we try to answer here. So basically what we want to do is how do we promote locally grown and then produced food oh, sorry um, in today's complex retail environment. So basically, like we are trying to answer is like do multiple sustainable statements, like a combining of like food labels, reinforce each other, or just like a crowd each other out. And also, this effect, like I mean, do like a different group of consumers respond differently to different messaging. So that's what we try to answer here. Um, So to answer this question, we collected like stated and then revealed preferences data, and then I'm gonna go into detail later. And then why does it matter? Because and I'm studying like behavioral economics, and then basically consumers face like income constraint or their time, cognitive constraint, or like their like emotional responses when making purchase decision. So what we say is like consumers are rationally inattentive, and then they have kind of like a potential biased perception or like a belief. Um, Based on their like prior experiences, and then their like previous belief. And then also there's a word that vote buy gap, which means like what they want to do and then what they do are different. So that's why we collected like stated and then revealed preferences data. Okay. Okay, so here's the data collection overview. So as I said, we try to capture consumers revealed, I mean stated and the revealed preferences. So we collected like multiple survey data, like um, participating like a cooking class and then food giveaway event, and then also online to capture like the to capture the characteristics of like diverse consumer groups. And then also we did experimental data, which including surveys. So we collected like revealed, I mean, stated preferences data, and then also like revealed preferences data. So this experimental data basically combines like this experimental data basically we can use it for like explaining like what consumers say, which is like a stated preferences, and then what they do, like revealed preferences data, preferences. Okay, so basically, like in the survey data, we ask them about like their purchasing habit, and then also what's your perceptions of like food labels, such as like organic and local, and then what's your motivation for like purchasing local and then organic, those kind of stuff. And then like in experimental data, we also have the same kind of like questions like purchasing habit, perception of like food labels and claims, basically like a statement. But we also ask them about like their like choice behavior and then also willingness to pay for like strawberries we used. And then finally, we also ask like, do you really want to buy those product? So this is kind of like reveal the preferences. All right. Okay, so here we have like so many data set, but today I really want to focus on our field experiment, and I'm gonna focus on like explaining some results from our field experiment. So basically, we conducted um, like experiment. One is on like June 29, I mean 28 at like a Fairfield Civics Center library. And then also we want to get like additional data sets, so we conducted again the same experiment again on October 22nd at Solano County Health and Social Services. And then uh, we we obtained like 180 survey data. Okay, and then we choose strawberries because it is basically like a homogeneous product. So once we introduce labels to those kind of product, we can capture like a kind of like a pure effect of labels, and then also not like processed food. Like they could be affected by like brand, but basically like a fresh produce. They are like homogeneous. So um, that's why we use like strawberries here. So as I said, like our field experiment consists of like three parts. So first one is like a pre-survey. So it is like it is related to like their stated preferences, like shopping habit, and then preferences of um, labels and claims or like messaging. And then once they completed their pre-survey, um, they participated in the choice experiment. So basically here, like yeah, I'm gonna explain it later. I mean, but experiment. And then once they completed the choice experiment, um, they also needed to answer some like preferences for like labels and then claims, and also demographic information as well. And then here, we try to capture or like we try to examine their real like a purchase decision. So once they participate in this survey, they received $30. But they could purchase strawberries at $5, like a posit price, once they complete like all the survey.
And let me just interrupt here
Yeah.
for a minute. I see that the slides are jumping a little bit again. This might be the UC Davis connection. We're both here in the office because it did stop a little bit here for a while.
Oh, I
And
see.
then before we move on, I also wanted to say that some of the Alliance members came and joined for the experiment. So some of you in the audience might be a data point in this data here as well as we are presenting. So I just wanted to mention this here.
Yeah, thank you so much for helping us. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. All right, so here's the detail of our experiment. So basically, what we did is like initially we showed like two identical strawberries without like labels. And then we asked them about like their initial preferences, like which one do you prefer, like left or right or like neither. And then like ask about like a quality rating from 1 to 10, and the willingness to pay 0 to 8, and then purchase intent, like do you want to buy one of these, and then or like neither, or yeah, those kind of things. And then show them like one of these messaging treatment. So first group, and then we randomly assigned them. So the first group, they saw sustainable Solano logo, and then grown in Solano County information. And then group two, they saw the USDA organic seal, and then grown in Solano County. And then third group, they saw like both, I mean, like sustainable Solano logo, and then the USDA's organic seal, and then grown in Solano County as well. And then we asked them to re-evaluate, sorry, excuse me, re-evaluate their like preferences, like which one do you prefer more, and then quality rating from 1 to 10 as well, and then WTP, willingness to pay. And then we finally asked them like, do you really want to buy this strawberry with like posit price as like $5? So it basically captures their stated what they want and then what they really do.
Yeah, and let me just add, so in this experimental setup here, so essentially they were asked whether they intended to purchase at the same price before we provided information, and then after we provided those information treatments, they had a chance to reevaluate their purchase choice. And as a reminder, all participants were compensated for their time, so they were endowed with the $30. And then if they purchased the strawberries, then they were purchased at the price of $5. So participants that purchased would then receive $25 instead of the $30 and the strawberry basket that they chose.
All right.
And again, feel free to ask clarifying question or any questions as Hyunjung goes going through here the slides.
Yeah, please ask any question. Okay, so yeah, that's our experiment. Oops. Yeah, so here's like brief descriptive summary statistics from our experiment. So basically, what we found here is like around like 55% is non-white, and then around like a 26% is Hispanic, and then like around like 60% participant is like are female. And then their household size, yeah, average household size is like 2.7. And then a third people they live with like children under like 18. Okay. And then more than half they lived in Solano County more than like 10 years. That's yeah, quite interesting. And then economic diversity, around like 30% of people they are like low income, which means like below 35K. And then around like 43% of people they receive like food assistance, for example, like a SNAP, WIC, or like a food pantries. And then we ask about like, do you have a car? And then around like 63% of people, they answer like they have a car. And then about like 27% of people, they have like agriculture background. All right, so here's some results from our pre-experiment survey. Okay, so we ask like where do you do like a grocery shopping? And then majority of people they answer like a grocery chains like Safeway, those kind of things, and then super centers like a Costco. And then also 40% of people they answer like discounted stores like Food Max in the Solano County. And then one interesting thing is like so also like many people, I mean like the more than like 3% of people they do like a grocery shopping at like a farmer's market, or like some people do like do grocery shopping at like a farm stand, and also CSA, like community supported agriculture.
And let me just add here, a large number of people said that they shopped at more than one locations, and the primary reason for doing so was actually for comparing prices and deals across different locations. But you do see that kind of the primary shopping happens at grocery chains and super centers, so that's the highest percentages here.
And then also this question, we allowed like multiple responses. Okay, and then we asked like what labels or like what labels and claims do you pay attention to? So pay attention to like in like 6 months. And then they do care about like organic, and then like about like 56% of people they intentionally purchased with product with like organic in past 6 months, and then also local, which is like 41%, and then also equally like a natural or like a naturally grown is also about like 41%. And then yeah, non-GMO is like about like 33%. So we can say like organic label, USDA organic labels and local claims are like widely recognized among participants or like consumers in Solano County.
And again, this is their stated preferences here. And as I said earlier, we opted here to give you some bullet points. We have the complete summary statistics and all of that. We presented that to Sustainable Solano, and that will be included in our final report as well.
Yeah. Okay. And then we also ask like who do you trust in terms of like information source? So basically they do trust like they do trust like information from like farmers or like producers, um, which is like 85%. And then also they do trust like information from like friends or like a family. And then also like local organizations like Solano, I mean Sustainable Solano, like NGO and then NPOs as well. And then also like quite equally they do trust like information from like a government certification, such as like USDA organic. Is that like a certified labels.
And let
Uh,
me just add here, Hangyang is using labels and claims here a lot. In general,
yeah.
we are testing marketing statements. So what Hua and I do in our research, we distinguish between label and claims. So labels is anything that is actually certified or verified by a third party, including potentially NGOs or the government. The USDA organic seal is currently the only sustainability message that is verified by the government, and claims we call anything that isn't verified, that could be by the manufacturer or the retailer, that doesn't have a uniform definition. That's what we usually use here as claims, and that's why we have this question like, do consumers differentiate between the source of information? Do they trust one source of information more than the other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so we can say like a credibility of the information source matters for how labels and claims, as like Dr. Kiesel explained, are perceived. Okay, so here's what we ask about is like what do you think about like local food, and then what's your motivation and the barriers when you purchase like local food? And then participant says like they consider local messaging or like a local claim when they purchase like a fresh produce and then dairy product, which is higher compared to like meat and processed food. And then the motivation for purchasing local food is like reasonably priced or they have like a good value, which is almost like 80%. And then they want to support like their local farmers and their local businesses as well. And then they also mention like availability. So when they do like a grocery shopping and then there's like a local food and then they purchase. And then also they care about like a freshness and then transparency of local food. But one interesting point here is that people say like local food are reasonably priced, but also like when we see like barriers to purchase local food, they also mentioned like it is kind of pricey, like 63% of people answered like that. And then also they mentioned like limited access and it is not convenient to purchase like a local food. Yeah, basically it is related to like accessibility. So it's a kind of like like the same reason, but like a different, like, I mean, for like motivation and then various as well too. Okay, so here's our findings from our experiment data. So first thing I want to mention is like initial preferences matter. So which means when they choose, I mean like when they choose or like when they prefer like something, they kind of like stick to their like first their initial decision. So here I compared like quality differences and then willingness to pay WTP differences. And then we are still in progress, but what I tried to say here is like when we compare like mean quality differences, it means like the differences between like what they chose and then the alternative. So it was 1.993 before we provide like labeling treatment. But after we provided them with like labeling treatment, um, as you can see, like the differences decreased. Yeah. And then also like WTP, it is also like the differences between like initial willingness to pay and then willingness to pay and then alternative. Uh, so it means like they value more on what they chose. But once we provide labeling information, they still prefer their initial choice, but you can see like differences decrease a little bit. So
Let me just add a little bit more context here. So this is something that we find in general and what is sometimes called in the literature reference dependence. So what we are describing here is when you make an initial choice or an initial preference before we provide any information for these two identical baskets of strawberries, as identical as we can, people usually choose one or the other. Very few people say I like them equally or I like neither. And once they make that choice, they actually make their valuation and even difference in willingness to pay consistent. And as you see here, that difference is greater than when we actually say one of them is potentially different in that it is locally grown, one of them is labeled. So the additional information reduces their perceived difference between the two alternatives, the one that they chose and they didn't choose. So that's a very interesting finding, and it's a finding that we see in other studies as well, so that the experience effect is usually a lot more pronounced or has stronger preferences than the information effect. And we will come back to this.
okay, yeah. Okay, so this is about quality perception. So basically, when we introduced food labels, it has like positive impact on perceived quality, which means is perceived quality. So what we found here is like organic label group, like a group 2. The organic label has the strongest effect to impact on like increasing perceived quality, which is like 21% increased. And then when we see the group 3 grown in Solano, and then we combine like sustainable Solano logo and then organic, it has like a moderate effect, which is, I mean, its effect is smaller than organic label itself. So 15%. And then also grown in Solano and then sustainable Solano County logo, the combination of those, it has like a minimal effect, and then it only increases like 4% of perceived quality. So yeah, and there's a like yeah, heterogeneity among like a group. And then also, as you can see, which is like orange graph. Basically, like as I said, like introducing food labels or like messaging, it has like a positive impact, but um, the message makes unlabeled product less attractive, which means, as you can see, like in the green graph, basically participants decrease their quality ranking to like unlabeled product. Um, okay. And then here's a result of willingness to pay. Again, like introducing food label or like messaging have a positive impact on willingness to pay as well. But here, the patterns are a little bit different from what we found in quality perception. So here, um, grown in Solano plus organic combination, and then grown in Solano, and then combine of like both Solano, I mean sustainable Solano logo and then organic. Um, so basically like you see organic seal and then has like largest effect in terms of like percentage, but still like grown in Solano with like both labels, they're kind of like equally have the impact on WTP, which is like a comparable. So, and then also like a sustainable Solano logo, it has like a smaller effect. So what we interpret what we interpret this result is like WTP willingness to pay reflects both quality and then also consumer value. Like they want to support like local farmers and then businesses. So they do care about like the credibility of like organic, but at the same time, yeah, they do value like local stuff, like supporting local farmers or businesses. Okay, so that was stated preferences, and then now what we found here is like um, the introducing labels or like a claims, it has like a limited impact on like consumers' actual purchases, uh, which is like revealed preferences. So we asked them like, do you want to buy like this strawberry with like positive price at like $5? Um, and I want to explain it this one first. And then the most participants said like, oh, I don't want to buy it. And it is about like 64% people or like a participant answer like that. And then the thing is like once we introduced food labels, still like a purchase rate largely unchanged. Actually, it's like a slightly like a decrease, like from like 36% to 35%. And then also we analyze it by like different like income group. And then for like high income group, like their purchase rate increases after introducing or like providing them with label information. Uh, but like middle income consumers, they decreases their purchase rate, which is quite high, from 29% to 19%. And then for low income, yeah, they didn't show like any change, like it's still like a 3% of people in this group, yeah, they answer like, oh, I don't want to buy it. Okay.
And this is where we are, as you see, we are still doing some analysis, but this is where we are getting back to the initial choice and the initial reference point mattering. So people rarely get incentivized to change their purchasing decisions in this experiment based on the label information because they're trying to be consistent here with their initial choice. What we sometimes see is when they were told that their initial choice is now the one that didn't receive the label, then they might decide that they don't want to purchase, but we see very few people switching, adjusting their purchases, or going from now that you tell me that this is organic and locally grown, I will purchase it, even though I decided not to purchase before.
Yeah. Okay, so they show like strong inertia and in decision making. So, okay, so to conclude, our main takeaways is yeah, obviously like messages when we introduce like messages that improves like their perception and the evaluation of like local food because it has like positive impact on like their perceived quality and their willingness to pay. Um, and then but like not all messages work the same. Yeah, so for example, like organic, the USDA organic sale, it has like a strongest quality signal. But at the same time, like a local only labels or like a claim shows a limited impact by itself, and then some impact, and then they show like a different impact when we combine like with organic, like a credible, the most credible labels in our experiment. And then also that's for like revealed preferences, but once we look at the, oh no, stated preferences, but once we look at the revealed preferences, we found like limited impact on actual purchase, even if we, even though we introduced like we introduced like labels. So behavior is really hard to change. And then also interesting point is like, as I said, like stated preferences, like their perception is not equal to their revealed preferences, like actual purchase behavior. And then the consumers' responses to food labels vary by income, and then we are still trying to analyze like more things regarding that. And then low income, basically less likely to purchase the labeled product. Okay, so here's the some results from like our post experimental survey. So we ask about like their willingness to support like local food, and then majority of people or like a participant, they answer like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna prioritize like Solano grown or like regional products in Solano County. And then also like I'm gonna regularly visit like a farmer's market and then farm stand. Mm-hmm. Um yeah, also like um yeah. And then like they also said like, oh, ask employers for local sourcing commitment or like donate, but um, it is kind of like low, which is like 15% or like a 13% of like participant answer like that. So
So what this is showing us here, again, if we put it in context, this is a follow-up question after after we actually saw what they did, and you saw that less than or around 50% actually purchased after they had a chance to purchase local produce. And when we asked them how they would like to support local and regional food systems, the most often chosen response was actually prioritize Solano grown and regional produce, a higher percentage than what we saw people making that decision in the choice experiment itself. So this is again the difference between stated versus revealed preference, or what is often considered the voter buy gap, right? So what people say that they want to do and what they actually do is different here. And so the other options here listed were other options that we gave them, and they were a lot less often chosen than this first option of prioritizing buying locally grown, locally produced foods.
All right. Yeah, so that's the end of our presentation, and then we are happy to answer any questions you may have. And then, yeah, thank you so much for, yeah, that's it.
All right.
Thank you, Hanya.
Thank you so much. We are going to adjust the settings so that if you have questions, you can take yourself off of mute and ask directly to Dr. Kiesel or Hyunjung. Or you can put it in the chat as well. We will monitor the chat.
And again, we have lots more data, lots of tables, lots more analysis. We try to keep it a little bit on the low technicality here and give you some of the highlights.
Kristin, while we're waiting, question. So all the data is, because now we saw the preliminary results. Now it's all finalized. Is it, can we start sharing? Because we already had agencies asking us for the data.
So what we shared with you in the situation analysis is the summary statistics from the experiment itself. And as we said, as we're preparing the marketing plan, we are giving you the finalized results, and then we will also give you the results from the surveys that we analyzed. So when we give you that, then we have those finalized reports. So you can share again in the sense that these are preliminary results that we sent you. We would like to not have it cited or published anywhere. That's where you should use the finalized reports, right? We just want to make sure that everything is correct and double checked. So before any of the graphs or tables go out.
Sounds good. Since we already have some hands raised, but I just want to make sure that we will make public by request to everyone the data sets once it's released fully through Sustainable Solano. Thank you. I think Olivia's was first hand. Olivia, go ahead.
Hi, thank you both so much for the presentation. I wondered if you could go back to the slide where it was like 3 bar graphs and it was talking about willingness to pay. And you were saying, we see this effect in other studies, and I don't think I totally understood what you meant.
Okay, yeah,
thank
gladly.
you.
Hyunjung, could you pull your slides back up?
Olivia, you said it was the willingness to pay.
Yeah, but maybe it was just like 2 bar graphs, and it was like you were saying
the willingness to pay. You mean this one?
it was something about like when you showed.
Oh, the reference point one? Yes, let's go back to that slide. I think it was the first one.
Before. Yes, this
Yeah.
one.
So what this is trying to show, right? So we give people essentially the choice between 2 identical products, 2 identical strawberry baskets. And what you see in this first pre-labeling here is that they perceive there to be a quality difference. And they also state they have a difference in willingness to pay. And this is after they decided that they like one more than the other. And so without any additional information, they state that they have a higher willingness to pay for the one that they thought is their preferred one. So now then what you see here in the other graph is like after we actually tell them there is a difference between the two of them in that one of this option receives one of our labeling treatment, that difference actually is less than it was before when we didn't give them any information. So this is sometimes that we see, and this is a tension between kind of policy measures of information provision and marketing. Some of you might be familiar, sometimes that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, that sometimes the less informed people have a higher willingness to pay. And so what you see here to a certain extent, their difference in perceived quality difference and willingness to pay was greater before we gave them any information than when we actually told them there's a difference between these two options. And so we see that in other studies. The other thing that we see in other studies here, and we are still teasing this out of the data here, is again that it's really, really hard to go against people's experience. Right? If you say, I like this better and I think this is the better quality, and I tell you, well, you also told me that you actually care about the environment. This is now the organically produced one. If this is disconfirmatory information, in other words, it's actually saying, well, you should change your preference. That's a lot harder to do than if it is confirmatory information, when it actually says, oh, this is the one you like better. Let me tell you, there's another reason that you should like this better. Does this help?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Chloe, I think you had a hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just putting it in the chat. Thank you so much for the presentation. I had a quick clarification question around methodology, and I'm sorry if this was discussed earlier, but I was thinking about the question around barriers to purchasing locally. And so I was wondering if you had asked pre-identified preset options, or was this open response and you identified common themes? If it's the latter, I would love to hear what other barriers may have been mentioned by your respondents. Thanks.
Yes, very good question. So these were questions with pre-identified options, and I'm trying to pull up the table. For all of the pre-identified options, respondents had a choice to also give us another option. Let me see. I can pull this up here quickly in our complete table. We could potentially go to another question, and I will go back to you and give you all of the different options here as I pull this up for you.
Sure. Much.
There is a question in the chat from Terry Arnold, and it is, are you encouraged by the data? Are the citizens of Solano County going to support efforts towards sustainability? I'm not sure what Terry would
as researchers? There's a couple of different takeaways from that. So I will say that some of the data and the trends that we see in the data are similar to some of the other studies we have run. And so what we see here is that information provision alone is not necessarily going to move the needle. What we also see, and this is what we saw in other studies, that to a certain extent, branding effects are a lot, branding when I mean an individual brand, are a lot more effective than actually these category effects, right? To say this is local as a blanket effect, right? So something that you can experience and you can experience as a preference. That's of course a lot easier to do when you have something that's processed or value added in other ways, right? Where you can have a real difference. Same as if you can actually see a difference in freshness, something that we call experience effects, that you can readily experience. That's a lot more accessible to consumers than telling you, look, you should prefer this because I'm telling you so. they will say they prefer, but what they do in the actual retail setting is a lot harder to influence with some of this provision. And you saw that the Sustainable Solano logo, despite all of the efforts and despite some of the familiarity on the purchase side, didn't do very much. Something that they think they can readily identify a benefit for organic. A lot of people think it has a health benefit. That's where we get more of a response to organic than we get sometimes to local production. So to me, the lesson is, and this is a lesson that we find in some of the other research, is that promoting local and regional food systems is going to be a lot more holistic than working on labeling and marketing messages, right? Making sure that there's access to local food, that consumers get to experience the quality of this local food is going to be really, really important. Again, the messaging alone is not going to fix it. We find experience effects are so much more prevalent than information effects in a lot of what we see in my research, and I've been focusing on information effects for a really, really long time. And I'm pulling up the.
Do you want me to pull out the survey or?
I'm opening the survey here.
Okay, great.
Just opening. And then I thought I could find it in our report, but I couldn't find the table. So I went back to the. For what might motivate you to purchase local foods, produce or foods, we had local foods is reasonably priced or at a good value. Local foods is available where I shop. I care about sustainability. I value transparency and knowing where, how, and by whom my food is produced. Local food is fresher, tastes better, is safer, is healthier. I want to support local farmers, local food business, and the local food economy. And then the other choice, so this was what might motivate you. On the what might prevent you is local food is too expensive. It is hard to access places that sell local foods. I don't see local food where I usually shop. I'm not sure what local means. I don't think local food is of higher quality than other food. I don't see any added value of buying local food. I just buy what's convenient and then other again. And so, as Hyunjung said, the good news to a certain extent is that a lot of people perceive local food as reasonably priced or a good value. The flip side of that is we also saw almost the same percentages saying local food is too expensive. So like the price showed up as a purchase motivation, a reasonable price, but still in some categories, a high price was also a deterrent.
Thanks, Kristin.
So we have a few other questions in the chat. Maggie is asking, what was the field research experiment like for the participants? And also, will the participant survey questions be made available
Yes.
in the future? Okay. And she was also asking, how was organic labeled? For example, was it only organic or was it USDA organic?
So Hyunjung showed our actual treatment, right? So we used the USDA organic seal for that option. So we had all of the options that grown in Solano County, and then we had 3 treatments. The first treatment was grown in Solano County, combined with the USDA organic seal. The second treatment was grown in Solano County, combined with the Sustainable Solano logo. And then the third option was potentially taken advantage of the awareness of the USDA organic seal when you promote the Sustainable Organic logo, and this is where it combined the USDA organic seal with the Sustainable Solano logo. And this is, and Hyunjung could pull up the slides again, but again, like in the quality rating, the Sustainable Solano logo had a minimal effect when combined with when just by itself. And when it was combined with the USDA organic seal, it actually reduced the quality rating. And this might actually be here's the appropriate slide here. This might be that if you have these multiple messages combined, it's just a lot of information and it's confusing potentially for consumers to figure out what all of this means. However, and this was the next slide that Hyunjung showed here, when we look at the willingness to pay, we actually see that the willingness to pay or the increase in willingness to pay is almost identical when adding the USDA organic seal and adding the USDA organic seal combined with the Sustainable Solano logo. And so one potential option is, again, that even though people think the Sustainable Solano logo does not do anything in terms of the quality of the product, there might be some valuation that does result in the same or an increased willingness to pay. Now, keep in mind, these are all stated willingness to pay, right? As we saw the purchase, we didn't see a lot of purchasing changes.
Okay. Moving on to another question. This is also from Valley Vision. She says, thank you for providing some of the results disaggregated by the household income. And she's wondering if there was an analysis done to see if there were any significant differences based on what city the respondents lived in.
So as we said, some of this analysis, we are still digging in a little bit deeper. This is part of Hyunjung's dissertation research, especially with regard to income. We do have information on which city respondents lived in. The data we showed today is the data from the 2 experiments we ran. So they are probably having higher respondents of the people in those cities. But the short answer is we can look into this and see if we see a difference based on the city that the participants state that they live in. One thing to say is that for the experiment itself, we had a relatively higher share of lower income, which to a certain extent oversampled relatively lower income. But part of Sustainable Solano's goal was also to really increase access and purchasing of locally produced foods among lower income populations. And some of the data we collected, again, was at some of the food giveaways. This is the survey data, and we haven't showed you the results. So we have some more data only on the stated preference side here, and we will continue to disaggregate them by income.
Yeah, thank you. I think some of the reason behind that is because we are looking into, maybe there's an impact of the way each city is marketing or supporting agritourism, perhaps, and the way that they communicate that out to residents, and how does that impact maybe and trickle down effect, right, to even lower income households that may not be involved in, higher level economic development opportunities and all of that, but still the awareness and the culture that a city government can kind of bring to raising awareness of those benefits of local procurement.
The other thing that I want to mention here, that the sample size is relatively small for the experiment. We have a larger sample size, again, when we pull in some of the other survey data and the stated preference. And the study that we are currently doing in Ventura County uses a similar design, also uses strawberries. And we will make the results of that analysis also available here to Sustainable Solano. And then we have even a larger sample size here for local production. And there, agritourism is also a really important focus. You're right about that. What I will also say when it comes to different income groups, what we find in other research, and to a certain extent it was the underlying motivation here, is that valuation of local is consistently strong across all income groups. We actually sometimes find that valuation of local production is higher among low-income groups as compared to organic. Organic, we find a lot is valued higher for high-income groups. Sometimes actually, and this is one of the things that we wanted to find, but we don't think we're picking it up in the data. Potentially, we are underpowered. Sometimes labeling a product as organic production might be a deterrent for low-income groups. So we don't find this. It might be because our sample size is too small. Here we are still expanding our analysis for the survey results.
Olivia was also asking about examples of the experience effects, like you could actually go to a farm stand or going to an open farm day. I think this is kind of piggybacking on what we were just discussing about agritourism. She's wondering what that looks like specifically for the.
So yes, so yes, this is kind of engagement. So when we actually think about information and experience effects for preferences, we think about this slightly different. We think about quality attributes or differentiating quality into three different qualities. We have experience qualities, we have search qualities, and then we have credence qualities. Now, experience qualities are any quality differences that you actually get to experience before or after you purchase a product. Search attributes are differences in quality that you get to search for before you purchase. And then the tricky ones are credence attributes, and these are differences in qualities that you don't ever really get to verify even after purchase. So both search and credence actually driven by information provision. Experience, something that you don't really need additional information. So something like flavor is an experience quality, right? Something like organic production, local production, these are things that you can't verify. You can't really taste the difference, at least not in a verifiable way. You might have perceptions that you taste the difference in that. But what then some of the information provision does for these credence attributes, so the things that you cannot really verify, the information provision is trying to transform them into search attributes, right? To say, I'm going to tell you that this is locally produced. So now this allows you to differentiate those two products before purchase. What we know from the general marketing literature is these differentiations are most powerful when you get to combine them with an experience attributes because that reinforces consumers' perception. And so we find this here again to a certain extent, right? So if I use the organic example, most people say they prefer organic because they think it's healthier and it has no pesticides. Well, organic makes no statements about the health benefits to begin with. The regulation is actually on the environmental benefits. And there's also pesticides that are approved in the organic production. So what consumers perceive and what they then bring their own experiences in might be very different than what the information actually gives you in the provision. So this is a long explanation to what we mean by experience effects, anything that you can access without relying on this additional information. It's a lot easier, right? It's a lot more accessible to just bite in an apple than reading a whole paper about agricultural production. That's why we asked about whether people had an agricultural background, which gets back to, we have a question here in the slide in terms of skepticism. So this is where we were getting at when we asked about people trusting information from different sources and so on. So we have some of that information, whether they trusted the label that we had there. Again, we saw in general a change or an effect in those labels. So it means that at least in their stated valuation, they said it did add value. They just not enough to really move the needle on the purchasing. Very good questions. I just don't have easy answers.
Anyone else? Don't be shy. We have researchers and data here. Oh, oh, Maggie. And Dave, you may have an additional question, but you know what? Go ahead, Dave. You're unmuted.
Okay, so I guess the other question was that is any of the studies that you were doing besides this, or I guess you couldn't really do it unless you actually advertised or actually got that information out there about the benefits of buying local. Or have you done studies in the past where that type of marketing where you actually educate the community on what buying local actually means? Because I heard one of the responses were that people didn't understand about buying local and things like that. So have you heard anything about that? Has that moved the needle on those kind of things?
Yes. So one thing that Hyunjung didn't present here and is that we actually in the post survey we give them additional information about the sustainable Solano logo and what it communicates, and also the USDA organic seal, right? So we tell them exactly what it means. So that's why we have a pre and post survey here. So we first assess kind of what their own perceptions are, and then we see if we move the needle just by claim or label that they see in purchasing, or by providing additional information. And again, we are trying to get at that, and that's really important. So marketing that gives people a reason to buy is always a more effective marketing. Again, for local, and I've done other studies on local, it's really important that consumers don't really perceive this idea of transport miles as the most important fact of local. Consumers consistently seem to think that local means small production, higher quality, and in a lot of cases, organic production. That's not, of course, and so this is where we are getting into this experience versus information effect. That's not a lot of times how local is defined. Local is not uniformly defined. That's the first point here. And we were trying to see if Sustainable Solano with the Sustainable Solano logo can actually define what local means here in Solano County. And to your point, right, so when we try to inform or educate consumers about that, we sometimes actually see their willingness to pay decrease rather than increase. And this is what then for marketing provides, again, this conundrum to a certain extent, that both manufacturers and retailers might not have an incentive to fully inform consumers, because if they do so, it will actually reduce their purchasing probabilities and their purchases in some cases. And we find some of our results are consistent with what we are finding in other studies here as well. So it's a very fine line to walk, that kind of education versus hype when it comes to advertising or marketing.
Maggie, go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you for presenting this data. I was curious to hear what the like field experiment, research experience was like for participants. Like, was it conducted on the UC Davis campus or remotely, or some other configuration?
Mm-hmm. So the experiment was conducted at two locations. One was a collaboration with a library. And so we had essentially a weekend, a library that was a summer read library day, where people that came to the library were able to pre-register. Some of this information went out and were able to register on site. And we didn't get our target number of participants there. And so then we ran it a second time at the public health offices. And so this was people that worked at the public health offices or people that came and used the services that day. Our goal is always to not have people come just for that. So we try to meet people where they are, and then we compensated for their time of participating in the experiment. So that's where they received $30, and then from the $30 they were able to purchase the strawberries or not.
Thank you.
And so again, our study that we are doing now in Ventura County is increasing the number of participants, and that will strengthen some of the findings or some of the things we can say to a certain extent. It's a different messaging, slightly different messaging that we are testing, but still local messaging.
And Kristin, I'm just curious if you could maybe list, what is it about the Ventura experiment? You said it had some similar attributes to the Solano County region, so I'm just curious what those are.
So what is similar for Solano County and Ventura County is that they're both agricultural production counties. They're both counties that don't have some of the large urban centers. So they are relatively rural counties. And that means similar to Solano County, that a lot of the agricultural production in Solano County actually gets shipped out to a certain extent. And so you saw even here that a lot of the Solano residents are primarily shopping at the supercenters and large grocery stores. And some of that regional product, when it comes there, it's actually aggregated, and it's really hard to tell what's grown in Solano County in those market channels as compared to, let's say, farmers markets or some of that. So those characteristics are the same, right? Solano County is right in the middle between these large markets, high willingness to pay markets, and that's San Francisco and that's Sacramento. And so this is really where the larger producers or the scaling up, that's where they are then working with grower shippers or with brands for strawberries, for instance. Driscoll's sources a lot of different places, and Driscoll's is not differentiating by county level, right? If anything, they will differentiate by grown in California. And so for Ventura County, they are in between Santa Barbara and in between LA. So it's a very similar setup there, mostly rural. The other similarity is that although a lot of people say they're shopping at these large retailers, you're actually in Solano County, and we created the map, and in Ventura County, similar, we actually have quite a number of independent, smaller retailers. We have a good distribution of farmers markets and some of these alternative channels. It's just seeing where consumers shop and how much they are using the channels. We do know from previous research that competition in the direct-to-consumer channels, so that's the farmers markets as well as the farm stands of all of that, has dramatically increased in the last decade, I want to say. Even so, the number hasn't necessarily increased. So we saw kind of an increase in farmers markets earlier, but the numbers have kind of stagnated. And so that's quite a bit of competition there for small farmers, and the margins aren't at large. And the margins really have increased, and where it's gotten a lot harder for small producers is the access to retail markets. And so we have seen this intensified market power and concentration in retail markets, that for 80% of the retail is actually controlled by these really, really large chains. And so that really has an effect on access to markets for smaller and medium-sized local producers. And so this is again where just providing information alone is not going to help. Really providing access to markets for small and medium-sized producers and making local foods available, actually creating these experiences for residents to experience local foods and have that taste experience or that freshness experience is going to be really, really important. And so again, Stephanie, and that I think Ventura County and Solano County are in a very similar situation. Traditionally agricultural county, a lot of their product is perceived as high quality, but doesn't get differentiated at any kind of level, and is potentially not as accessible to the local residents as it is maybe to the consumers in the large urban areas.
Yeah, thank you. There was another question that came in from Olivia, if you have time. What do you see as the confluence points between this study and the 2017 era study that you did around markets in Solano? I think, Olivia, you might be referring to the feasibility study that we did in 2017 with Dr. Kiesel, perhaps?
So this is essentially a kind of continuum of the study that we did there, right? So the feasibility study made two really important points. And so one important point is a general point that I make in my research a lot for regional and local food systems is that any marketing strategies that we create for locally produced products can't restrict the access to markets. It needs to increase the access to markets and potentially reinforce. What that means is that we want to stay away from these definitions by mileage, for instance, because that would now potentially reduce the market opportunities for producers, because that might mean that they suddenly can't sell in San Francisco or Sacramento, depending on, or other areas, right? Because that's not then local, because based on those mileage. But that's where the high consumers are. So having it by trying to come up with differentiation that is unique about the county. So like something to say grown in Solano County, but then it needs to be followed up with kind of, I think David said this earlier, we need to tell the consumers why it matters to them. What we see is organic production seems to matter because they think it affects their health, right? So similar with local, we have to communicate the direct benefits to the community. And at least in California, support for farm workers, support for diverse communities is something that consumers say they value a lot. So that needs to be part of the communication strategy. The other thing that we said in the feasibility study, and it's connected to what I already mentioned here, you can think of having two markets: the higher willingness to pay consumers in these urban centers, and potentially some of the lower willingness to pay consumers in kind of the more local markets. And so different producers can essentially have the high willingness to pay consumers on the one end, subsidize to a certain extent some of the lower willingness to pay consumers. So if we are creating local marketing messages that some of the more established brands can use to reinforce their branding, there might be some positive spillover effect for some of the smaller brands or some of the smaller producers as well. And so if you are sending out some of your product and sell it in San Francisco, you might actually be able then to sell some of that product within Solano County a little bit cheaper to address some of these concerns or constraints that the more local and consumers that work in agriculture and have lower income are facing. Does that make sense? I know there's a lot there. Unfortunately, there's on the one hand, everything that we see, all of the changes that we see in agricultural supply chain, they are consumer driven. So we see this really large product differentiation because consumers increasingly want to know more about their food. But all of that has a limit because they also increasingly pay less and less attention. And so that means that it really creates this kind of moral hazard on the production side, right? So anyone and everyone can say locally produced, and so you can have that in Walmart, and you can have it in some of the large retail centers. And if it's not defined, then we don't really know what it means. And these producers don't have an incentive to define it, because once we make it more specific, as we see in this study, it might actually be valued a little less than if we let consumers believe whatever they want to believe that means. So Olivia, it's still figuring out what the best what the best way to go forward in educating consumers and marketing those products by creating more market opportunities and more revenue generating potential for those producers is.
Right. To be continued, I guess.
Maybe just as a last note that, well, first of all, thank you very much for your participation and questions, and Dr. Kiesel for your thorough answers, and we're looking forward to final results of this study. So the second stage will conclude with marketing and communication plan, which again we will make a presentation just like this one, because our goal is to make it as widespread as possible and being used by as many businesses and agencies and organizations in Solano County as possible, because even though with all the limitations we just heard, there is still a path forward, and there are concrete measures and strategies we could all use. And we do believe that if we are on the same page, if we are consistently providing the same messaging, for the local food, whenever you find yourself, we will be stronger together in this. So yes, stay tuned, more to come. If there are any more questions that you wake up in the middle of the night, and just send them to us, we will include them into the blog post with this recording and all the resources and how to get access to the data sets. Instructions will be there.